Today is Thoughtful Thursday, and we're actually going to think about the thoughts in our heads. It's the Joe Show. It's the Joe Show with me, Joe. On Thursdays, we always try to get a little thought-provoking here on the Joe Show, and today's topic I actually, ironically, think about a lot. And when I'm thinking about the stuff that's on my mind, I actually have a voice in my head that I hear. It's my own voice, and I'm thinking the words. I'm actually hearing the words in my head. I would call it inner speech. In fact, the article that we're reading also calls it inner speech. The article is entitled, "Not Everyone Conducts Inner Speech. Joe does, but not everybody does." Inner speech is frequent, but not for everyone. The thing that makes me think about this is the fact that not everyone is experiencing reality the same. So I might have this inner speech, but somebody else might be experiencing life in a totally different manner. And that actually, I think, causes some conflict in how we see the world and how we perceive the world. So let's learn what else is going on besides inner speech. Your pristine experience is whatever is directly in your experience. I want you to note that. Pristine experience means whatever we are currently experiencing. This is our pristine experience because we're in the experience right now. I hope that makes sense because he's going to refer to pristine experience a lot in this article. Chris Heavey and I gave random beepers to a stratified random sample of 30 students from a large urban university and interviewed them about the characteristics of the randomly selected pristine experiences, meaning they would get a beep throughout the day, and then at that point they would have to write down or journal what their current pristine experience was and how they experienced it. 5 main characteristics emerged from this study, each occurring in about a quarter of the samples, so 1 1/4. And in fact, many samples had more than one characteristic. 3 of those 5 characteristics may not surprise you. Inner speech occurred in about a quarter of the samples, inner seeing occurred in about a quarter of all samples, and inner feeling occurred in about a quarter of all samples. The other 2 phenomena just occurred as frequently but are not so well known, and we don't get into them in this article. But already we're starting to see that inner speech is not alone in the way that some people experience reality. Some people apparently think in feeling, so they will feel something and they won't actually think words, they just have feelings of thought, or they're feeling something and that is translated into thought in their brain. And other people have images, so some images pop up in their head, and that is translated into thought or action on what they need to accomplish. But let's focus on inner speech for now because it's the topic of this article. Consider inner speech. Subjects experience themselves as inwardly talking to themselves in 26% of all samples, or 1/4 of all samples. But there were large individual differences. Some subjects never experienced inner speech. Other subjects experienced inner speech in as many as 75% of their samples. The median percentage across all subjects, though, was about 20% experiencing inner speech. As a result of this study and others that we have conducted, I'm confident that inner speech is a robust phenomenon. If you use a proper method, there's little doubt whether or not inner speech is occurring at any given moment, and I'm confident about the individual differences. Some people talk to themselves a lot, some never, and some occasionally. But Bernard Bars, one of the leading researchers in conscious science, says, quote, "Human beings talk to themselves every moment of the waking day. Most readers of this sentence are doing it now. It becomes a little clearer with difficult to say words like infundibilium or methylparaben. In fact, we talk to ourselves during dreams, and there is even evidence for inner speech during deep sleep, the most unconscious state we normally encounter. Overt speech takes up perhaps 1/10 of the waking day, but inner speech goes on all the time." And in another view, John McWhorter, a noted linguist, says, "When we utter a word, we cannot help but mentally see an image of its written version. In our heads, what we have said is that particular sequence of written symbols. When we say dog, a little picture of that word flashes through our minds, Sesame Street style. Imagine saying dog and only thinking of a canine, but not thinking of the written word. If you're reading this book, it follows that you couldn't pull this off even at gunpoint. However, the author of this article says, I'm pretty sure that Bars and McWhorter were entirely mistaken. Maybe Bars talks to himself all the time, and maybe McWhorter himself sees images of written words while he talks, but I've investigated such things as carefully as I know how, and I have become convinced that most people, let alone all people, do not do such things. My aim is not to criticize Bars and McWhorter. Their comments are typical of claims that many others make about their inner experience. Instead, I wish to draw your attention to the theme of this series of blog posts. Most people, including psychologists and conscious scientists, and quite likely you and me, don't know the characteristics of their own and others' inner experience. I'd be happy to have you or science say, no, Russ, it's you who is mistaken. Bernie and John are right. As long as you go on to say, and we know that because we've developed a method of exploring Pristine Experience that's better than the one you and your colleagues use. But as far as I know, you and science are not in a position to say that. So Russ here is wading into some pretty heavy territory when it comes to how we experience consciousness and how we experience reality. I've discussed this with a lot of my friends, and as I mentioned before, I have an inner speech going on. I hear my thoughts in my head. I've talked to a friend of mine whose girlfriend, I guess, has feelings. I think that's what I remember correctly, that she has feelings. I have never met anybody so far that does images, but conceptually, according to this article, about 1 in 4 people are speakers, 1 in 4 people are seers, 1 in 4 people are feelers, and 1 in 4 people are something else, which I'm guessing is sensing. They just have a sense. I don't know what that exactly means, but it's sensory. So I'm curious, if you're watching this video and you just heard me read through this article, how do you think when you're sitting there just thinking about your day, or when you wake up, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? In one article that I've read about this, a woman says that she gets up and then sees an image of coffee in her head, I guess, or floating above her, almost like a sim, and then it doesn't go away until she gets the coffee and completes the task for coffee. And then I guess there are other images that she may see, like food, toothbrush, hairbrush, shower, something like that. I'm not entirely sure how that works because that's not how I experience life. When I wake up in the morning, especially if it's via alarm, I generally think, damn it, I'm awake. I like sleeping, so that is my first reaction. It's not the best first reaction, but it's my reaction, and I hear it in my head. I hear the speech in my head. And I assume, I guess, other people just either feel good or feel bad when they wake up and then continue on with zero internal monologue. Are you having an internal monologue? In fact, I hopped over to Reddit and found a post on our No Stupid Questions. How do people with no internal monologue think? And some people shared their experiences. Like, I can have an inner voice, but I rarely allow it. That would be really interesting. I have been actually pontificating recently how I could potentially learn to stop the inner voice in my head. Let's see what this person says. Stopping sub-vocalization really speeds up reading and thoughts in general, I've found. Trying to find words to describe an idea or thought is a detour when you already have a full essence of it in your mind. That makes a lot of sense. It would speed up the rate of thought and the reading because you wouldn't have that monologue going in your head reading every single word, which people who feel or have images, I'm guessing, don't. Although if you're thinking in images and you're reading, it might slow you down because your brain is visualizing, and that could be a little distracting. This person says, I don't really have an internal monologue. I have to force myself to use one in situations where I really need to regulate my behavior, such as a job interview. So it actually sounds like that person does have an inner monologue, but they either have it under control or they don't pay much attention to it unless they really need to utilize it. That gives me hope that I could learn to shut down my inner speech and just kind of exist and have thoughts go without actually hearing them in my head. And that thread led me down a path to this question. Do people who are born deaf have internal monologues? Do they? We got one answer from a deaf person on Reddit, and this is why Reddit can be so beautiful sometimes, because it really allows you to connect with people that you would maybe never get to ask these questions to. And the answer is, yes, I'm deaf and have deaf friends. We have internal monologues, but it might not necessarily be in English, more like a picture monologue. I really don't know how to explain it well. They go on to say, yes, I was born deaf. I now wear a cochlear implant and wore hearing aids from the ages of 5 to 23. Words I've never seen, heard before usually get looked up for their phonetic pronunciation. I still tend to mangle it as I have a slightly nasally voice. Before I had decent audible comprehension via hearing aids, it was mainly to look up the meaning of the word. Contextual cues help out as well. So it seems like this person had a combination of both inner seeing and inner speech for their inner monologue, which is pretty fascinating. I would suggest to you, coming out of this Thoughtful Thursday, to be thoughtful about this. Think about yourself, ironically, how you think and how you visualize or how you feel or see the world. And let me know in the comments what type of thinker you are. Ask your friends as well. Did they have an internal monologue? Are they visual thinkers? Are they feeling thinkers? What do they have? What is their experience in the world? I think this is a fascinating topic and really should be talked about a lot more between friends because it'll help you understand your friends even better and colleagues, coworkers, partners, whomever. Discuss with them how they think, give them the options. Maybe they didn't even realize that people are different from them. It seems like a lot of people don't realize there could be differences in the world between inner speech, inner seeing, and inner feeling. And then the fourth and fifth mystery options. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you find out. That's been today's Thoughtful Thursday. I hope it made you think a little bit about thinking. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button and mash that bell to get a notification every time I upload a new video, which is pretty much daily at this point. If you find something cool, you can send it to hijoeshow@gmail.com. And until next time, think something good because I love you.